Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Brian was cutting the salmon on his plate when Amanda dropped the sentence that would change everything. They were having dinner at home, a regular Tuesday. The table simply set, candles lit more out of habit than romance. The conversation drifted without direction, punctuated by the comfortable silences of people who'd shared a life for 7 years. She mentioned work, the endless meetings, the pressure from new projects at the tech company, where she worked as a marketing manager. Then between bites, Amanda said casually with a little smile, "You know, I've been fantasizing about Daniel lately. It's kind of silly, but there's just something about him that makes me, I don't know, excited." Brian laughed. It was an automatic laugh, the kind you give when someone makes an unexpected joke. He raised an eyebrow, took a sip of wine, and replied with something like, "Oh, yeah, who's this interesting Daniel?" Amanda laughed too, and explained he was her new supervisor, recently transferred from another branch a few weeks ago. She described him as charismatic, confident, the type of person who commands a room. Brian saw no malice in it. Couples talk about other people. It's normal, harmless. He changed the subject, asked about the project she was leading, and the evening went on without further surprises. But the sentence lingered. It echoed oddly in Brian's mind, like a sour note in a familiar melody. He tried to ignore it, rationalize it. It was just a throwaway comment, a silly fantasy, as she'd said herself. Nothing serious. Over the next 2 weeks, though, Brian began noticing subtle changes. Amanda started coming home later, not every day, but with a frequency that hadn't existed before. Always the same excuse. Meetings running long, urgent deadlines that Daniel needing last-minute revisions. Brian worked as a financial consultant and knew corporate dynamics. Well, he knew intense weeks happened, but something felt different now. Amanda would come home and head straight for the shower. She'd change clothes immediately, toss her work clothes straight into the laundry basket. When Brian tried to kiss or hug her, she'd dodge with excuses about being sweaty or tired. Her phone, once left carelessly around the house, now always sat face down. She carried it into every room, even the bathroom. When it rang, Amanda would glance quickly at the screen, look away from Brian, and take the call somewhere else. It was on a Thursday night just before 3 a.m. that Brian's suspicion turned into something more concrete. He'd gone to bed early, exhausted from a demanding work week, and Amanda had said she'd be staying late to fix an issue at the office. Brian reached for his phone on the nightstand, checked the time, and felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He heard the front door open, footsteps in the hallway. The sound of her bag dropped on the couch. He got out of bed and walked into the living room. Amanda was taking off her coat, her eyes wide when she saw him standing there. "You scared me," she said, her voice slightly trembling. "I thought you were asleep." Brian studied his wife carefully. Her makeup was smudged, mascara faintly stripped beneath her eyes. Her hair, which she'd pinned in a bun that morning, was now loose and disheveled in a different way, as if it had been touched, messed with. She didn't look like someone who'd spent hours in front of a computer. She looked like someone who'd spent hours doing something else. "Working this late?" Brian asked, keeping his tone neutral. It was chaos. Daniel needed help with the investor presentation. We stayed late revising everything until we finally wrapped it up. Amanda looked away, walked into the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water. "I'm exhausted. I'll take a quick shower and go to bed." She passed him without further explanation and locked herself in the bathroom. Brian stood in the living room, heart racing, mind racing through every detail. Her perfume smelled different. There was a masculine woody scent mixed in, one he didn't recognize. Her clothes were slightly wrinkled, and her eyes, when they met his, held something he'd never seen before: guilt. The next morning, Brian waited for Amanda to leave for work. She rushed out as usual, gave him a quick kiss, and promised to try getting home earlier. As soon as her car disappeared around the corner, Brian grabbed his laptop and started searching. It didn't take long to find what he was looking for: private investigation agencies, detectives specializing in marital cases, discreet professionals who promised quick results. He read reviews, compared prices, and finally called one of the highest-rated firms. The detective went by the name Richard, a man with a deep, professional voice, who met him in a small but tidy office downtown. Brian explained the situation, showed him photos of Amanda, gave him the address of her workplace and her usual schedule. Richard took notes on a pad, asked specific questions about her routine, about the behaviors Brian had noticed. He didn't judge or make unnecessary comments. He simply explained how it worked: discreet surveillance, photographic documentation, a full report in 10 days. The price was steep, but Brian didn't hesitate. He needed to know the truth. The next 10 days were the longest of Brian's life. He tried to maintain normally at home, but it was impossible not to analyze Amanda's every gesture. She kept coming home late 3 or 4 times a week. She kept showering the moment she walked in. She kept her phone glued to her hand. They barely talked anymore. Meals were silent, interrupted only by superficial questions about each other's day. She seemed distant, as if she were physically present, but mentally somewhere else. Brian wondered if she sensed that he knew, if she noticed how he watched her, how every word she spoke was filtered through the growing distrust inside him. On the 10th day, Richard called. "I've got the full report. Can you come pick it up today?" His voice was neutral, but Brian detected a note of regret, as if the detective already knew the impact those findings would have. Brian canceled his afternoon appointments and headed to the office. Richard greeted him with a thick brown envelope and the solemn expression of someone about to shatter someone else's reality. "Before you open it, I should warn you. The contents are explicit," Richard said, hands folded on the desk. "If you'd prefer, I can give you a verbal summary first." Brian shook his head. "Just show me." He opened the envelope and the world collapsed. There were dozens of photos. In just 10 days of surveillance, Richard had gathered evidence of encounters that had clearly been going on for weeks. Amanda and a man, Brian assumed it was Daniel, entering a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. The photos were time and date stamped: Monday at 7:35 p.m., Wednesday at 8 o'clock p.m., Friday at 7 p.m., 3 times that week alone. There were photos of them leaving the office together, laughing, his hand resting low on her back. There were shots taken through the windshield of their car, showing them passionately kissing before entering the motel. And there was a detailed written report. Richard had discovered that Amanda and Daniel had taken a 3-day marketing conference trip to another city, but the event never existed. They'd stayed at a luxury hotel, dined at expensive restaurants, all charged to her corporate card. The detective had even obtained copies of some messages exchanged between them, sourced from an internal contact with access to the company's messaging system. "Spouses?" Brian interrupted, looking up at Richard. "He's married." "Yes," Richard confirmed, sliding another photo across the desk. "Daniel's been married for 5 years.
His wife's name is Laura, and she's 7 months pregnant." Brian felt nauseous. Amanda wasn't just destroying their marriage. She was potentially wrecking another one, too. And there was a child involved, a child that hadn't even been born yet. He took a deep breath, trying to grasp the full weight of it. Richard went on, explaining that everything had been documented legally. that the evidence was solid and could be used in divorce proceedings if needed. Brian thanked him, paid the remaining balance, and left the office carrying the envelope like a bomb about to detonate. He returned home and prepared everything with unsettling calm. He printed the most damning photos, a dozen of them, and spread them across the dining table. The very spot where they'd shared dinner the night Amanda first mentioned fantasizing about Daniel. Each photo was placed so she couldn't avoid seeing them when she walked in. Brian made coffee, sat in one of the chairs, and waited. It was almost 7 p.m. when Amanda arrived. She came through the door humming softly, her bag slung over her shoulder, phone in hand. When she turned toward the living room and saw Brian sitting there, the table covered in photos, the smile vanished from her face instantly. What is this?" she asked, her voice fading. "Come take a look," Brian replied, his voice steady but icy. "I think you'll recognize them." Amanda approached slowly, eyes fixed on the table. When she finally saw the first photos, all the color drained from her face. She picked one up, then another, her hands shaking. "Brian, I can explain." "Explain?" Brian repeated, nearly laughing at the word. "Are you going to explain all those late nights you spent working? Or maybe the conference that never happened? Or perhaps how intensely you two worked together at that rundown motel 3 times a week?" Amanda let the photos fall onto the table. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders beginning to shake. "It was a mistake, Brian. I don't know what came over me. It just happened," she whispered. "You fantasized about him right here over dinner, and I laughed. I laughed, Amanda, because I thought it was a joke. Were you already sleeping with him then? Or did you start after testing me to see if I'd get suspicious?" "It wasn't like that," she cried, eyes red. "I didn't plan this. I felt alone. He gave me attention, made me feel desired." Brian cut in, anticipating the word she'd eventually say. "Is that the word you want to use? He made you feel desired. And what am I to you? Some fool paying the bills while you play mistress?" Amanda tried to move closer, but Brian raised his hand, stopping her. "Don't touch me. You lost that, right?" He took a deep breath, sorting his thoughts. There was more he needed to say, more she needed to know. "There's something you might not know about your precious Daniel." Amanda looked at him confused, tears streaming down her face. "What do you mean he's married, Amanda? Married for 5 years, and his wife is 7 months pregnant. You're destroying a family that never even got a fair start." Amanda staggered backward, grabbing the back of a chair for support. "No, he told me he was divorced. He said he was. He lied, just like you lied to me. Just like you lied about everything. The difference is I'm not just going to accept it and move on. I've already sent all these photos and the full report to Laura, his wife. She deserves to know who she's married to, just like I deserve to know who I married." "What did you do?" Amanda screamed, her voice now frantic. Brian stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You destroyed our marriage, lied to my face for weeks, spent our money on hotels and dinners with your lover, and I have no right to expose the truth. Are you insane?" He walked over to the kitchen counter and picked up another thinner envelope. "And there's more. I sent copies of everything to HR. Relationships between supervisors and subordinates violate company policy, especially when they involve misuse of corporate resources. That fake trip you took, paid for with your company card. You're both going to have to explain that." Amanda collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. "You've ruined my life," she managed between tears. "I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose everything." "You ruined your own life," Brian corrected, his voice calmer now, but still cold. "I just made sure the consequences were fair. You made your choices, Amanda. Every lie, every secret meeting, every time you looked me in the eyes and pretended you were working, those were all your choices. Now you'll have to live with them." He grabbed his car keys and wallet and headed for the door. "I'll stay at a hotel tonight. Tomorrow, you need to leave. You can take your things, but I want you out of this house by the end of the week. My lawyer will contact you about the divorce proceedings." "Brian, please," Amanda pleaded, stumbling to her feet. "We can talk. We can try." "Try?" He turned, meeting her eyes one last time. "There's nothing to try. You turned a fantasy into reality and destroyed 7 years of marriage. You shattered the trust one had in you, ruined every good memory we had. There's no coming back from that, Amanda. No fixing it." And he walked out, closing the door behind him, leaving her sobs and the marriage shattered by lies and betrayal.
The following days were a whirlwind of legal actions and consequences that unfolded quickly. Laura, Daniel's wife, confronted her husband that very night. Ryan learned this through the attorney representing Laura, who contacted him to thank him for the evidence and offered mutual testimony if needed. Daniel tried to deny it, but the photos were undeniable. Laura immediately kicked him out of the house. She didn't reply to messages or answer calls. When she finally managed to confront him a few days after her termination, he was blunt and cruel. "You think I'd ever commit to you? It was just fun. Amanda, you took it way too far." And he turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the parking lot where they used to meet. Amanda tried to rebuild. She sent resumes to dozens of companies, but her termination for cause and the rumors circulating in the industry shut doors before they even opened. She eventually accepted freelance gigs, small, poorly paid projects, barely enough to cover rent, on a tiny apartment in a distant neighborhood. Her friends, who once filled social media with photos of gatherings and laughter, gradually disappeared. Some sided with Brian, others simply drifted away. Uncomfortable with the whole situation, Amanda was alone, dragging the weight of her choices like an anchor pulling her deeper down. Brian, on the other hand, focused on himself. He threw himself into work, took on new clients, expanded his portfolio. He returned to the gym, something he'd abandoned during the last years of his marriage. He reconnected with old friends, rebuilt social ties that had fallen by the wayside, and slowly, the wound began to heal. It didn't vanish. It never would completely, but he learned to live with it. He learned that betrayal wasn't a reflection of him, but of the person who betrayed. 6 months had passed since that devastating night. Brian was at a cafe near his office, waiting for a client, for a morning meeting, when he saw her. Amanda sat alone at a corner table, laptop open in front of her, a cup of cold coffee beside it. She seemed smaller somehow, as if she'd shrunk. She noticed him at the same moment. Their eyes met across the busy cafe. Amanda stood, hesitated, and walked over to him. "Brian," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hi, Amanda," he replied, tone neutral, polite, but distant. "Are you okay?" she asked, and it was a genuine question. Her eyes scanned his face, noting how healthy and renewed he looked. "I am," Brian said simply. He noticed a woman entering the cafe, Sarah, a colleague he'd started seeing a few weeks ago. She waved at him and walked toward them. Amanda followed his gaze and understood. Something inside her seemed to break a little more. "I know I have no right to ask anything," she began, voice trembling. "But I need you to know I'm sorry every single day. I regret it. Every morning I wake up and realize how much I destroyed." Ryan looked at her for a long moment. He could see the sincerity, the pain, but he no longer felt anger, no longer felt hurt. He only felt a weary indifference, as if he were looking at a stranger he'd briefly known in another life. Sarah reached his side, gently touching his arm, and he felt gratitude for her presence, for the reminder that life had moved on. "I believe you're sorry," Brian finally said, his voice calm. But that doesn't change anything, Amanda. You turned a fantasy into reality and destroyed everything we had. 7 years thrown away because you didn't have the courage to be honest with me, didn't have the courage to say you were unhappy or wanted something different. You chose to lie, chose to betray, and now you're living with the consequences of those choices. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I truly wish you the best. I hope you find a way to move forward, to build something new. But that life, the one you destroyed, is over. Amanda nodded, tears silently streaming down her face. I know, she whispered. I know. Brian turned to Sarah, who watched him with understanding, and the two walked out of the cafe together, leaving Amanda behind. He didn't look back. He didn't feel the need to. That chapter of his life was closed, its pages sealed by lies and betrayal, but also by justice and resilience. He'd uncovered the truth, faced reality, imposed fair consequences, and most importantly, he'd survived. He'd found a way to rebuild, to move forward, one step at a time, free from the chains of a marriage destroyed by fantasies that became all too real.